You see, the Damani family has been the pioneers of architectural aluminium in India since the early 1950s. And from 1970s, we were doing a lot of exports to the GCC. Now, around the middle of 1970s, we carried out a large project in Kuwait. If you know, there was a housing project which had 4,000 houses in the township of Suleybikat. We did all the work of supplying and fixing those windows from India. But at that time in the 70s, exports from India were very difficult. There was a lot of bureaucracy with the government. So we decided to set up a manufacturing plant in the GCC to service the area. I, being the youngest member of the family at that time, was assigned the task of putting up a plant in this part of the world. So in 1979, I came to this part, went to all the Gulf states, did a survey, a market survey, and found that Bahrain at that time had the best telecommunication, the best airline connections, best infrastructure, not forgetting that the Bahraini people were the friendliest and most educated at that time. Though Bahrain in land size was the smallest among all the other Gulf states, but I decided that keeping its infrastructure in view, I would put up my headquarters here, treat the whole of the GCC as my home market, and the rest of the world as my export market. Today, we export some of our products to over 30 or 40 countries all over the world. 40 countries all over the world. And I would say 36 years since then, I think I'm happy with the decision that I took to put the company here. Historically, I would say that Bahrain has always been the pioneer among the Gulf states, be it telecommunication, banking, the aluminium industry, or the refining industry. But unfortunately, for some reason or the other, it has not been able to maintain its pole position, or it does not continue to maintain that position. As far as Bahrain as a destination today, I would think Bahrain still continues to enjoy an advantage over others because of its regulatory norms, where it is much ahead of all the other Gulf states. In spite of being a small place, given its location, its friendliness of its people, the open, I would say, let's say, access to the GCC markets and the US, provided of course the FTA is renewed with the US. Companies who want to set up base here should eye the Gulf market and the US market, and it still becomes an advantageous position. Not forgetting that Bahrain still continues to enjoy being the lowest in terms of expenses. Bahrain still is the most competitive in the region. With Portline 6 coming in operation in 2019, Alba's total production will jump up to 1.45 million tons per year, and it will become the single largest on-site or single-site smelter in the world. Now, at one time, Alba was the largest smelter in the Gulf, but again, it lost its position to Dubai. And with this extension of Portline or expansion of Portline 6, it is again going to gain that position of number one. Or regain. Let's put it regain. Yes, it'll regain its position. But Alba has to be careful because there are a lot of new entrants from the other Gulf states now into the scene, and their production cost is lower compared to Alba because of their lower energy costs. Coupled with that, today there is a lot of extra production globally compared to the usage. So a lot of stock is being built up. And then you also have the European countries imposing a 6% tariff on aluminium from the Gulf. So all this are going to pose challenges to Alba to be competitive. So they have to be mindful of that. Just being the largest does not mean you become successful. You have to market your products. Now, Alba has said that 50% of its production from Portline 6, which is approximately 250,000 tons per year, is going to be marketed for downstream aluminium industries in Bahrain. For that, I think Bahrain as a whole has to concentrate and invest more in downstream aluminium industries which produce value-added products. That's very critical. So that Alba can market its products to these companies and improve its average cost, as most of the Gulf smelters sell their products globally, and what they sell is pure aluminium, which is at the lowest cost strata. That's very important. Further, I think, having been in the aluminium industry all my life, that Bahrain, because of its newfound position, needs to create an institute for training Bahrainis in aluminium. That's very, very crucial, so that you can create a Bahraini workforce which specializes in downstream aluminium manufacturing industries. With this, Bahrain will give a special advantage to investors who want to invest in downstream aluminium industry of not only the raw material but a well-trained workforce, which is a very, very crucial thing for investors. Then again, one has to look that as we produce more and more aluminium, there's going to be more and more scrap. And today, one has to know that it takes only 5% of the energy to produce aluminium from scrap than what it takes to produce primary aluminium from raw material. So with so much scrap available here, one has to look at industries which can recycle the scrap and produce them into different kind of alloys, because this would not only save tremendous amount of energy, which is very important for Bahrain, we would be doing a lot of good for the environment as well. I was just reading in today's newspaper that the Gulf Rolling Mill is setting up a plant at the cost of $45 million to recycle scrap for their use, which is exactly what I was saying. That's moving in the right direction. See, while Bahrain, I must say that Bahrain has an excellent workforce when it comes to white-collar workforce. But as an industrialist, I'm concerned that there is a shortage of disciplined and skilled blue-collared Bahraini workers who are ready to work in SMEs, production lines, and on-site. This creates a big problem for companies to meet their Bahrainization target, which in fact has an effect on companies who are to get their quota for foreign labor. So overall, the result is there are companies who have invested a lot of money but who don't have the right labor force to meet their production capabilities. And if you don't meet your production capabilities, you're not able to compete globally. So the root cause has to be attended here of training blue-collared Bahraini workers to be disciplined and skilled. And while we're on the subject, I must add here that we need to appreciate what Tamkeen is doing in Bahrain. They have been giving a lot of support to SMEs, and this has surely helped a lot of companies in the given economic environment. No, I think given the current economic scenario, I think the government has no other option but to lift some of the subsidies to balance part of its own budget. We all know Bahrain has a very limited income source, and it has been subsidizing literally everything for a very long time, and no government can continue to work on this basis. But I don't see an issue here, because as far as the subsidies are uniform for everybody over a period of time, it will adjust itself in terms of the prices being passed on to the end user by increase in price of all commodities and salaries. So it becomes a uniform playground for everybody. If the subsidies affected only a particular segment of business, one should worry. But when you remove subsidies, it affects people in general.
Yeah, it's across the board.
Correct. The cost of living goes up, and it never stays. Ultimately, the cost of living always gets passed on to the final end user, one way or the other. Don't forget that many years back, people used to come to Bahrain to work for 50-55 dinars.
That's right.
Today, the same people will not come to Bahrain below 120 dinars. And we have no other option but to hire them. So, if the subsidies, once they are removed, the cost of living goes up. Let's see a scenario, what happens? The workers will say we can't afford to work. So they will go. Can an industry run without workers? It cannot. It has to accept the fact that they have to pay higher salaries and their overhead costs go up, which has to be built in their final cost of product and passed on to the public in general. This happens all over the world. One cannot live with subsidies forever. The current slump in oil prices, together with the economic turndown, global economic turndown, and the political scenario in the Middle East is surely not good news for business in the Middle East, because you have everything going wrong. And particularly for Bahrain. Why particularly for Bahrain? Because Bahrain is a very small area with very limited projects, and it was just coming out to the aftermath of what happened in 2011. So given the scenario, it's going to be a pretty difficult challenge for Bahrain. But I feel this is when the government needs to step in. They need to invest heavily in projects, and by projects I mean projects which has far-reaching benefit to all the businesses in Bahrain, rather than specialized projects where the advantage or benefit goes to only a few companies in Bahrain. That's very, very crucial. So the government has to really look at a plan and increase the spending in these kind of projects. And one more thing I must add at this given time. Given the scenario, the banks are becoming very conservative, because as is seen, when business goes down, the banks' lending policies change, they become very conservative. But I feel this is the time again. Bahraini banks are flush with a lot of cash, and they also need to do their part of the work in a situation like this, and they need to loosen their monetary policy and be more flexible with their facilities to businesses in Bahrain who have stayed and gone through all these difficult times. Because as we all know, we need an umbrella when it's raining, not when it's sunshine. And the banks always have this policy that when a company is doing very well, they come out to lend. They come out and lend to you, and when you're in difficulty, they draw all the support. So that has to be a paradigm shift when it comes to this issue. I think in today's world, networking is a very important tool, and the Capital Club, I think, gives a platform for people to meet the creme de la creme of the business and the professional communities in a very elegant atmosphere. That's very, very good. And then the new themes which the Capital Club is bringing out, like the monthly majlis, that also gives opportunity to interact with some of the top figures in Bahrain on a one-to-one basis. And I think in a very short time, the Capital Club has created a niche for itself where everybody likes to be seen and heard, which surely is a feather on the cap of the Capital Club.